Hello, House of Mouse Reviews here, and I think you can guess what today's review is. Kung Fu Panda 4. I mean, after doing the retrospective, I think you knew, I had to get to this as soon as possible. And going into this, I wasn't so sure how things would go because I've seen the reviews, and it is clear from fans that this is a film that they're saying it's a film that didn't really need to exist. Which, I can guess why, but the original intention from DreamWorks was to make this a six-part film franchise. So, in my view, I was waiting for this big. I was really anticipating this. And, since it's been released in theaters, well, at least here in Australia, the reviews have gotten better. Like on Rotten Tomatoes, I think it was 64, you know, 3 weeks ago. But now it's gone to I think 75 on Rotten Tomatoes. That's what I think. So there has been an increase. Not sure if it's come out in China though. I know they love these films, so maybe that might increase a bit more. I don't know, but I'll have to double check that. With but going into this, what is my thoughts on this? Because I have a huge bar when it comes to these films. I mean, I think the first film is a great film. It was a breath of fresh air from DreamWorks, as I said, fantastic. The sequel, the second film, one of my favorite film from DreamWorks, one of my favorite films of all time, hands down. The third film, that was the not as good as the first two, but was still a very fun film and enjoyable in its own way, and a great send up to what was the original trilogy. What do I think of the fourth film? Of all the internet reviews I've seen of this film, I actually think it's a lot better than what a lot of those internet critics have said. In my view, I actually find this on par with the third film. I mean, it's not perfect, and it's nowhere near the magic of the first two, especially the second. And there is some glaring issues with it. But I don't know. I think it's actually not as bad. It's actually, much like three, the pros balance out the faults, the cons, I should say. But what is the story? So, taking place, I don't know how many years after the third film, Poe has is still the Dragon Warrior and is, continuing to protect everyone with his kung fu. And still doing his regular, keeping his his innocence and his you know charm as he continues to protect the Valley of Peace. However, Master Shifu informs him that he has to give up the title of Dragon Warrior and choose a successor as he's meant to, as Uruguay has, you know, as he's now supposed to become the spiritual leader of the Valley of Peace. And so that means he must impart wisdom to the whole entire valley. But Poe doesn't really know how to do that, and he prefers to remain the Dragon Warrior even though he has to give it up. This, as he struggles to accept change, he encounters a mysterious thief robbing the Jade Palace, a fox named Zen, or Zhen, I think it is, played by Aquafina, who informs him that Tai Lung, his old enemy from the first film, has mysteriously returned thanks to the works of a new villain known as the Chameleon, played by Viola Davis. Chameleon is a shapeshifter who's using magical powers and is intending to bring back the dead kung fu masters, including Tai Lung and the other villains from the previous film in Shen and Kai, and a bunch of other characters, kind of, and plans to steal their essence of kung fu from them and become the greatest warriors of kung fu in all of China and basically take over the world. Despite Shifu's ref, Despite Shifu telling him not to go and taking her with him, and the Furious Five not being around to help, Poe releases Zen from prison and goes to find the chameleon and take her down. All the while, his two fathers, Mr. Ping and Li Shang, are trailing behind him out because they fear this is one challenge Poe cannot you know succeed at. So yeah, I will say. So let's start off with the pros in this. let's start the big one, the animation. I mean, the animation of the previous films was always superb, and I loved it too. I love the animation. Well, and while there's not really one thing that is missing is the 2D segments. I still, or the hand-drawn stuff, I should say, or the shadow puppets. Actually, I think maybe there are some shadow puppets here and there, but what I'm saying is the animation still looks impressive. I mean, they still keep it, you know, still looking like the previous films, in particular the third film. It's a lot brighter. In fact, I think it's probably the brightest of the films, which I actually don't mind. I mean, it probably, reflects on a few things, and there's still some, uses of. You can still see some elements of the first two films, but I appreciate it trying its own thing and integrate a bit more to put some Boots the Last Wish look into it, which I welcome. Actually, kind of works. It can work. I think it actually works with Kung Fu Panda. The 2D CGI hybrid look, especially with the martial arts. In fact, martial arts scenes are fantastic. They're all superbly done, very creative, and you love it all the way. Of course, the voice acting is still superb. I mean, Jack Black is always he is Poe. He is, as I said before, he is this character, and it's always great to hear him, and he still does a great job. And I still think Poe's a great character, but he is outdone in this by his two dads. I mean, Mr. Ping and Li Shang have supply the best laughs in this film. They're a great comedic duo. We saw how good they were, how good their dynamic was in the third film, but this film really steps it up further. And Bryan Cranston and James Hong do an amazing job voicing them. Oh, it's so great. It's also great to hear Dustin Hoffman return again. Ian McShane is great. It's nice to hear him return as Tai Lung, and you can definitely tell he for how many lines he had. He really loved returning to the character. And the new actors do a good job. I mean, I love Ki Hoi Kwan in this as one of Shan Zhen's former thieves thief partners, and Viola Davis does a good job as the chameleon, although her character is a little bit weaker, especially her motivations. Um, Also got to give credit to the music. I mean, Hans Zimmer's back; he does a great job. John Powell didn't return to help him out, and said they got someone else, but she did a good job with her compositions. And Tenacious D's cover of Britney Spears' "Hit Me, Baby, One More Time" at the very end, I really enjoyed that. I mean, I always knew that at some point in these films they were going to have Tenacious D do something with this. I mean, I'm sure Jack Black was probably hoping to do it earlier, but he does it. Their cover of Britney Spears for the song is really good. In many ways, I also felt like there was the same thing with including the first fart joke in the franchise. I mean, look, I knew this was going to come at some point with these films, and you might be wondering if I sort of groaned at this because I have mentioned before, I'm so sick of anime films including them. But I didn't really mind it. That's all so quick, and it isn't exactly as groan worthy as say other scenes are, especially in DreamWorks films. But I mean, it's not like they had toilet jokes before. I mean, there was a lot. There were pee joke. There were some pee jokes here and there with the first three films. So it's not like this doesn't exist. It was just meant to happen. It was just going to happen at some point. But all I say is that if there is a fifth film, don't you did it once, don't do it a second time. But with that said, there are problems with this. I've already mentioned the chameleon's motivation, so I'm not going to go that far. But let's get on to the issue that mainly everyone has talked about. The Furious Five are pretty much nowhere to be seen in this film. I mean, they appear. It's described what they're doing in the background of this film, and they do technically appear during the end credits, but other than Seth Rogen doing providing a few lines here and there as he, providing a few some voice work for Mantis in at the end credits, none of the other actors return. Um, the thing is, I think I'm actually willing to accept it just because with what Toy Story 4 did with with every one of Andy's toys, Buzz and somewhat Jesse. I mean, it was understandable why they did what they did with Mr. Potato Head because Don Rickles passed away before they even began recording. But the others were the rest of Annie's toys were handled so poorly in Toy Story 4. You kind of wonder why they even brought them back, and maybe they should have done what they did with the TV specials. So in this case, I'm actually fine that the Furious Five aren't don't really aren't really there. So I'm actually willing to be okay with that. What I'm not, but it is still disappointed not in it. So if that's not too bad. The lack of the returning villains is the weakest part of it, in my view. I mean, they marketed hell like Tai Lung was coming back, and well, he technically is there. He's not in it for very long, and and most of the time it's the chameleon masquerading as him. So yeah, but the fact that both Kai and Shen return as well, but neither J.K. Simmons or Gary Oldman return. You just basically only see them in as like they're there in prison with Tai Lung by the chameleon. You know, that's the disappointing factor, and especially when you get when after the chameleon's defeated and the villains and the choice that all the villains make with when they after Poe frees them, it sort of makes that choice very uh, uh, poor because you don't hear them speak or interact with Poe. If they had have had, you needed them to speak to Poe in order for that choice to, feel justified. I mean, at least with Tai Lung, he does speak to Poe before the battle, so it is handled, so that's not too bad. But you needed it with you needed to see Shen and Kai talk with him before that very decision. Um, Whether or not it could have worked is debatable because obviously Kai would want to Kai would be obviously want Poe's chi, and Shen would want to kill him, because of his, obviously because of being tied, his the prophecy, and how much he wants all pandas gone. From the fact that Li Shang also it's not shown, but Li Shang obviously sees Shen at the very end, and you would think that he would confront him as well for killing his wife and causing him because of him he was separated from Poe for so many years. Um, well, that one it would have been great if I had have had that, but I'm willing to put it aside, I guess. But I just feel like he needed them to speak to justify that decision at the end. As I said, it's believable somewhat with Tai Lung, not so believable with the other two. Also, were any of those capture Kung Fu Masters at the end from the TV shows? So I mentioned before, I hardly watched Legends of Awesomeness. I haven't seen the other one on Netflix with which had Jack Black in it. Uh, I'm not I'm not quite so sure. If they are, just let me know. Um, Another thing, Aquafina. I mean, it, she's definitely one of the weakest actor in this, and it's basically seen that Jen is basically Aquafina being Aquafina. I mean, and look, she's definitely. I think I think she's a fine actress, but a lot of all her roles basically feel like the same character. And with the exception of say the bad guys, which I thought that wasn't too bad because I thought she was she handled that role pretty well. And her serious moments in Shang-Chi, I wouldn't say there's no real overlying difference between all her characters. I will say I do think she's better in this than she is in Raya, but so she has definitely improved. But you can still pretty much say, oh, that's an Aquafina character. It's just Aquafina. So yeah. Although I will give credit where credit is due. Her chemistry with Poe, with Jack Black is pretty well done. And I think the biggest issue is how predictable this movie is. I mean, taking the Furious Five out of it, also affects how predictability, how this film not really being unpredictable compared to the other films, because you kind of there was always a hint of surprise with with every one of the previous films, but this one you can basically tell where everything's going to go, and yeah, that does weaken things, and I think with the story, it definitely would have helped if it had that unpredictability, Oh, and just a little nitpick. Can Mr. Beast stop invading anime movies? I mean, I love him. I love watching his videos, but every film he's been in it's all been voicing animated characters, and I mean, obviously this is only I think he's I don't know third, fourth, fifth film, but he was in a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. He, and he's kept on doing voice work roles. Let me see him if he's going to appear in make a cameo in a movie. Let me see him actually in live action. I don't know. I mean, it does make sense why he's in it. I mean, he's friends with Jack Black. He's done a few, Black's appeared in some of his videos as well, but I don't know. Let me see you actually face to face in front of the camera. Be like MacPat in the Five Nights at Freddy's film. Just I don't know. Give me something. Although now I think about it, with Jack going to be playing Steve in the upcoming Minecraft movie, maybe he it's most likely Mr. Beast will appear in that, which will voice the character in that. And well, to be fair, I think that would actually make the most sense considering how many of his gaming videos involved Minecraft. So okay, that would make sense, but well, make more sense than him being in this. So yeah, but yeah, just appear in front of the camera in live action. Uh, I don't want to hear all your film cameos to always be voice work. But yeah. With that said, you might be thinking you would have to say this is the weakest of the previous weaker compared to the other films, the previous three films, and uh, yeah, but I do think but I still think this is, and I do think the score is weaker too. If I was to give a ranking of the other films, I mean, I'm not sure if I did it with the when I did the retrospective, but if I had to give scores to the other three films, I would say first film's a 90, well, 9 out of 10 has stars, I should say. The second film is a 10, perfect 10. The third film will be an 8.5. This would be a 7.8. However, I do think it is close to being on par with with the third film. I don't know. I think the fact that and I think the main thing why I think it's on par with the first film, of with the third film, is the fact this film actually is a lot longer than the third film, and that was my biggest issue with that. So the fact that is a lot longer, I am being a little bit more kinder to this. Should have mentioned that earlier. But yeah, I think Kung Fu Panda 4 is at the very least on par with the third film. It's not nowhere near the first two, but justifies its existence. It's a decent enough film. I think Kung Fu Panda fans, enjoy it. I I wouldn't, as I said, it's not nothing like the first two films. It's nothing like the original trilogy, especially the second film. But I still think it's a worthy enough follow up. And if they ever did do a sequel, I think they realize what mistakes they made with this and how they can improve it. So yeah, I still enjoyed it. 7.8 out of 10 has stars. It's not as It's nowhere near the first three films, but I still think it's enjoyable enough and on par with the third at the very least. And I am obviously still looking forward to seeing what DreamWorks come up with in the future. I mean, I mean, Orion was a good film. Was a really good film, and the upcoming Lost Robots is actually something that's really starting to get be something more. I'm actually getting more and more excited for that the more I think about it. And I think that might be a really good sleeper hit, I think. A big surprise this year. So I definitely review that when that comes out in theaters. I mean, well, Chris Sanders' first uh, anime film he's directed since The Croods. So what's more? What what else can you be excited about? But anyway, so what's next on my channel? Well, that we'll have to wait and see. I'll see what I can do for upcoming reviews. But so keep a lookout. And you never know, maybe a film released in theaters, maybe something else. Probably a few video games actually I might have to look at reviewing. But in the meantime, House of Reviews is out, and I shall see you in my next video. Ciao!